Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. Today, we're diving into a radically different paradigm, one that is going to flip our entire understanding of the universe right on its head. Now, when you hear the word nothingness or absence, what do you immediately picture? Right, most of us just picture a void, an empty space, a big echoing zero. But what if absolute nothingness isn't an empty void at all? What if, instead, it's a highly pressurized active mechanical force? Well, that is exactly what the source material we're breaking down today argues. We're going to walk through this complex, incredibly fascinating concept step by step. So let's jump right into the mechanics of absence.
Section 1. The Illusion of Emptiness. Rethinking the Void.
So, before we can even start building this new mechanical model, we really have to dismantle our baseline assumptions of what nothing actually means. Basically, we have to completely toss out the vocabulary of lack. Think about our traditional everyday view. Absence as a void. It's just the idea that absence is a lack of things, right? Like an empty cup or a quiet, empty room. But the material we're looking at today argues that absence is actually a pressurized infinity. It's a full-on mechanical reality. Think of it as the absolute, measurable, and active data set of everything that is not, has not been, and simply cannot be. So it's not missing anything at all. Rather, it's a complete massive archive of the unreal.
Now, there's a very specific trap we need to avoid here. We cannot, under any circumstances, confuse this new definition of absence with potentiality. See, potentiality implies a future that's unfolding into presence. It's like how a tiny seed contains a latent tree, right? It marches forward in time toward its realization, just waiting to become something. Absence, on the other hand, it's a static density. It is a fullness that requires absolutely no activation, no completion, and zero realization. It's already entirely full and complete exactly as it is.
Section 2. The density of the Mulu. Absolute fullness.
The source actually has a name for this absolute fullness. They call it the Mulu, and it's defined as the zone of maximum ontological density. Now, you might be wondering, how on earth can something with absolutely no things in it be dense? Well, it's because the infinite scope of what is not real, literally all the things that do not exist, never have existed, and never will exist, vastly, vastly outweighs the tiny little fraction of things that do exist. It contains exactly zero presence, yet it is completely, impossibly full. Crazy, right?
Section 3. The mechanics of absence. The blueprint.
Okay, so if the Mulu is completely full, it definitely isn't dead space. In fact, it operates like a massive machine with distinct measurable properties. The source actually isolates 6 core properties that dictate exactly how this machine works: containment, pressure, boundedness, viscosity, memory, and priority. Let's take these apart one by one to really understand how absence governs our reality.
The foundation here begins with containment and pressure. Containment essentially means that absence has this incredible capacity to hold presence within its domain without being consumed or diminished by doing so. It literally holds reality without being depleted. But because it's this infinite density compressed into perfect symmetry, it naturally generates an active internal resistance. It exerts this unyielding outward force. And that, my friends, is pressure. So what exactly happens when you have that kind of unyielding outward pressure? It tests boundaries, for sure. And that brings us to boundedness, and more specifically, a concept called the Measurerette. The Measurerette is the puncture. It's the exact coordinate where the internal pressure of absence finally just exceeds the structural integrity of the whole system, forcing a catastrophic localized release. I mean, it literally blows a hole right in the boundary. And when that localized release happens, boom, we hit property number 4, viscosity. The exhaust from this puncture immediately alters the medium itself. See, the phase transition from the Mulu into presence causes whatever passes through that puncture to undergo an immediate, irreversible change in state. It hardens. It undergoes a permanent phase transition so that it can absolutely never return to its fluid potential. Basically, whatever escapes the puncture becomes solid, fixed presence. Which brilliantly illustrates the 5th property, memory. Because that exhaust hardens the moment it passes through the puncture, absence actually retains a structural trace of what happened. The crystallization of the boundary around that specific puncture forms an irreversible collar of scar tissue. Think about how wild that is. Absence essentially remembers its wounds. This scar tissue physically props the leak open forever, meaning the walls of absence can never ever seal back up once they've been breached. Finally, we reach the 6th property of the blueprint, priority.
This wraps up the mechanics by establishing an absolute, unbreakable rule. Logically, temporally, and structurally, absence exists first. It was there before the puncture, way before the release, and before any of that hardening. Presence is entirely dependent on the pressure and the puncture of the Mulu. Therefore, presence is really just a fleeting exception to the rule. Absence is and always will be the permanent governing rule of the game.
Section 4. The terms of presence. Who owns the room?
Now, I know all of this dense structural philosophy can feel a bit heavy, but it can actually be grounded into a wonderfully simple visceral metaphor from the text. The furniture does not own the room, and the ink does not own the page. Think about it for a second. The room itself contains and dictates exactly where the furniture can go. The blank page owns and dictates exactly where the ink can sit. In the exact same way, this massive mechanical force of absence fundamentally governs all of presence. Absence contains the things that exist, it pressures them into being, and it ultimately dictates their terms.
Which brings us to the ultimate takeaway from today's explainer. If this mechanical foundation actually holds true, if reality itself is dictated by a pressurized infinity of what is not, then what in the world does this mean for the psychological and experiential architecture of the observer? Are our own minds also shaped by the immense pressure of what is not there? It is a deeply provocative thought, and one I really hope you carry with you today. Thank you so much for joining me. Keep questioning the void, and I'll see you in the next explainer.